Hello guys. I am so sorry. Welcome to Come Sit and Chat with Dr. Clay. Hi, I am Dr. Clay. Forgive me, but I thought that I wasn't seeing some people on the side. You know how sometimes you guys put the chats and things like that, and I wanted to make sure that that was in play. So for ending I apologize for ending the video previously and starting over. So forgive me. So if you are watching this, please do not hesitate to type in a hello or say something so that I know that you're there. Thank you very much. And hello, Ian. Good day. How are you? And so I want you to ask any questions that you may have. So I'm starting over and I apologize. So basically, today we're discussing how to deal with boredom, and many of us already know how that feels, that feeling or experience that you have of wanting and not being able to satisfy that want with an activity or something that you're doing. And I know right now, because most of us, if not, I hope all of us, are supposed to be self-isolating. And please make sure that you're washing your hands, you're using your hand sanitizer. Hello, CT cover, that you're cleaning your surfaces, doorknobs, countertops, things like that. Please make sure that you are all practicing self-isolation with your social interactions, that you are 6 feet away from individuals that you are engaged with, if it's a conversation or anything like that. Please make sure you're protecting yourself and others. But one of the horrible things that many of us might be experiencing, or most of you may think, you and your children, is I'm bored. That restless feeling that you feel when you're waiting, maybe for a delayed flight, or you're online at the DMZ or DMV, excuse me, DMZ. Ooh, that's Korea. Now, at the DMV, when you're waiting to get information about your car or your driver's license, or you're waiting on a flight, or you're waiting for somebody who's getting dressed. That's usually what my husband would say. He's waiting on me to get ready, and it's usually an hour. He might get restless and bored. And then I might see him scrolling through his phone or something like that, because he's trying to find something to engage himself at that moment in time. So there are many studies that have shown that boredom can cause negative as well as positive things within each individual. One of the negative things that we both know, all of us know, I'm sure, is eating mindlessly. Snacking, having chips. Oh gosh, let me just eat a doubles. No, no. And oh, that was 15 minutes ago. Let me have another doubles then, right? So different things like that you'll find that you end up doing. I am so sorry. Hello. I want to make sure that everyone is able to still see me and the feed is coming through. If there are any issues, please make sure you're typing in the chat area so that I know and I can correct them. Okay? So, many of us hate to be bored, especially our children. Even though the negative part of being bored is that you might gain a few extra pounds because you're eating, or you might actually engage in maybe some risky behaviors, which are some things that we don't want our young children doing. Such as doing drugs or engaging with other people that you know you don't normally do. When you are bored, we are trying to get the individual to lean more on the positive, intriguing sides of boredom. Guess what? Do you guys remember that when you're bored, sometimes your creativity or creative juices are like really moving in your brain? You get activated to be a little bit more motivated to think outside of the box, right? So this is what we are trying to do for our children. Now, it depends on what happens when your child is bored. If when your child is bored, all you do is plug them in, then no, you're not going to get anything positive out of boredom because of that. But if when your child is bored, you actually, hello, Jeanette, you actually engage them in creative play, then then yes, that is going to be an exciting part or a positive influence of boredom. Okay, now we know kids are going to get frustrated, so will you. But I will strongly encourage you to definitely create boredom opportunities for your children. Now, many of you are not going to be happy when I say this next thing. The first barrier to our kids when it comes to boredom is who? You. Yes, us. We are the ones that are the first barrier to our kids actually crossing over their boredom into this creative cycle that we definitely would like them to be in. The reasons for that obviously is you don't want to hear the whining. Many of you are like, Mom, I'm bored. What am I supposed to do? And they're whimpering and they're crying. Hello, Pamela. And they're whimpering and they're crying and they're like, I'm unhappy. What am I supposed to do? Do something. Do something, Mommy. Do something, Daddy. Come play with me. Come get me out of my boredom. This is some of the things that you would hear, and that they're just so unhappy. And yes, we do know that some of our children, when they're unhappy, they want to make you unhappy as well. And unhappiness is something with our kids that many of us have trouble with tolerating. And I do understand. Don't worry, I get it. But then there's also other deeper reasons why some people don't want to face boredom. It's just that when they have to face boredom, then they can't avoid whatever is bothering them. They're not able to avoid, be it if it's a big issue or a small issue. At that moment, when there's nothing to engage them or preoccupy them, so to speak, then they have to think of the things that really might be bothering them and causing a level of anxiety and having big questions come up. And some of those can be questions that many of us are not ready to deal with. If life is good, if life is bad. Right now, we're dealing with COVID-19, and we're dealing with the possibility of us catching this illness and something happening to us, or us transferring it to another person and hurting the ones that we love through interaction, things like that, and different causes for anxiety. So I need you to know that it's okay for you to be in that place. It doesn't always have to be a dark place. And if you're finding that when you are in that period of boredom, that it is a dark place, like I said to you before, I have posted and will post at the end of this on all of my Facebook sites resources that you are able to access. Many mental health professionals in Trinidad as well as in the US meet with you on the phone, online, and we'll have an actual therapy session, so you wouldn't have to be concerned about, again, you are not alone. Okay? So now when we want to create this boredom opportunity for our kids, it's not something that is going to be done like that or overnight. So imagine that many of us, when we were bored as children, your parents might have said, just go outside and play, or you have chores to do. That's when I was growing up, or even when my mother was growing up. They really didn't seem like they had time to be bored, because guess what? They would pick up a stick and go outside and dig up worms, and they would create castles, and they would climb trees. I recall in Trinidad, or maybe some of you in the US, where you are in the country or down south or wherever it is that's more of a rural community, you go down there and you use your imagination. Oh my God, what an idea. My imagination. Is that really such a thing? Hello, Miss Berry, how are you? Is that really such a thing? Imagination? Is it okay for our kids to utilize their imagination? What are some things that can occur with our children when they actually have to be off the computer, off the game, not watching TV, using their imagination when they're bored? Because I know when Carrington, my daughter, would say, Mom, I'm bored, the first thing out of my mouth was, then deal with it. Deal with your boredom. How are you going to fix it? Mom, I'm dying. Oh my God. Oh, really, Carrington? Is boredom actually going to kill you? Well, she hates it when I step into her and I say, well, when I was a child, long, long time ago, we played with our dolls. I'll tell you, I have walked into the room with my brothers playing with their G.I. Joe toys. And I promise you, call Ryan or Brent and they will tell you, they created series of episodes and shows with these GI Joes. And every single time they would play, like the next day, it was a continuation. I was like, how do you guys remember which GI Joe did what? But they did, because they were in their imagination, and they didn't want anyone to come in to the room and interrupt them. I had another cousin who used to cut out pictures of people in magazines and newspapers, and she would call them her paper people. And she would go into that world, that safe place for her with her paper people. She would create the perfect families and the perfect playmates. This is another way that children learn how to deal with conflict. Children learn, hello, Avenel, how are you? Children learn how to deal with their own boredom, so to speak, and they become creative and they solve ideas. How do you think we decided that we're going to fly in planes? Did you think it wasn't somebody who was just sitting there and being like, the Wright brothers were bored and they became creative? And they found ideas of things, saying, I would like to be in the sky. I would like to go to the moon. Whoever came up with those different ideas put themselves in what we would consider a boredom opportunity. So it is up to us to allow our children to have boredom opportunities. So many of you are going to say, well, what am I supposed to do when they start to get mischievous? Guess what? Mischief is the absolute evidence of creativity. So when your children are being mischievous, they're being creative. So guess what you have to do? Create a space for their boredom. So I'm still looking. I don't see any questions yet. I don't see anybody sharing if they have had to deal with some levels of boredom or what they've done to create boredom opportunities for their children if they're doing it. Or are you just sticking them in front of a television or a Game Boy or whatever it is that they're playing with nowadays, and ignoring them? That's not going to cause creative ideas. They're actually just going to be plugged in and become kind of zombie-like, don't you think? So we have to make sure that they can be busy with creativity. So what we're going to do is we can start scheduling within their day. Yes, you can. You can schedule within your day a period of boredom. Yes, I recall my period of boredom. I was going to Scotland with Carrington, and we were driving in the car. And madam, for at least an hour of that drive, they are not allowed to. Oh, somebody has a question. Hi, Trinidad missing the house, now joining. Oh, hello, Edwards, how are you? Yes, I saw several Trinidads, don't worry. So yes, but now they had an hour that they could not be on their iPads or the telephone or anything. Guess what they had to do? They had to look out at the scenery. They had to use their imagination. They had to ask questions about the things that they saw. So when they didn't want to ask any questions, we didn't present anything. We just was like, okay, hello, Denise, how are you? We were like, okay, we're not going to say anything. They had to engage the conversation. Children should be responsible for their own boredom. You are not supposed to be responsible for them when they're bored. They find other things to do just as well. They may decide to pick up a book and get lost in a story of whatever. It may not be War and Peace, but it's going to be something pretty engaging. I know for you, you're like, oh my God, I'm scared. If my kids are bored, they're going to be bothering you. Yeah, they are. And at first, they're going to be annoying. And at first, second, third, they're going to frustrate you. And it's going to take you some time to learn how to tolerate it. But when they are engaged in their own creativity during this boredom opportunity, what do you think you can do? What are some things you would be able to do? I would love to see some of those suggestions. So please, some of you, please pop on in. I think some of the questions are seeming a bit delayed, but don't worry, type them in and I will notice them and I will definitely bring them, within our discussion. So don't worry about that. All right. So please don't forget that you are the model. So if when you're bored, what do? Your children are watching you. Do you go right in front of the TV? Do you pick up your phone immediately? Guess what? When they're bored, that's what they will be expecting to do as well. So when you create a boredom opportunity, you're not just creating it just for them, you're also creating it for you. Take a pause. Yes, you might be staring at the wall for a little bit. You might decide, a new color would be lovely here. Or, like myself and my spouse has just recently decided, we're going to put down hardwood floors. Home Depot has been very busy lately, and that's, of course, our local hardware store in the US. And everyone is completing a honey-do list. So, here is another positive way that you are able to get to the things that you had put on this list for yourself or for your spouse to do. Here are some things you can start checking off the checklist of different things that can be done. You can start teaching your children how to be responsible for their own space, how to organize their rooms, especially some of our kids with special needs. Sadly, our children who have ADHD, especially, boredom is something they cannot stand. They can become sometimes quite destructive during those periods if it's not a structured environment for them to actually be bored, or space for them to be bored. So this is something that you're going to have to work on. Yes, have coloring books around. Have toys around like G.I. Joes and things like that. Technology, there should be a period where technology is completely silent. So, I saw something, but I think that was Farrell, but I don't know if you posted a question. So make sure you type it in, because if you don't actually type it in and post it, I'm not able to see it. I just see it flash and then it disappears. Okay, so you have those opportunities where you put coloring books around, things that we used to use, connecting the dots, board games, and your kids will start to either play with each other or they will engage you to play with you. Not all of us are privileged enough to have more than one child where we can have them learn to play together. They can actually also learn conflict resolution, because guess what? They're going to bicker. They're going to argue. They're going to fight. And they have to learn how to fix it. When we were younger and we would be outside playing with our friends, there wasn't any issues about someone, during my time anyway, as well as my mother's time. You might get a black eye or something like that with a little fisticuff fight that you would have with somebody, but we didn't have those issues where somebody was going to take a knife out or a gun out and hurt us. We would argue, we would play to dozens, we would, kind of have our conflict resolution together, and we would work on it. And you know what? The next day we would be friends again. Children haven't learned how to do that, and sometimes you'll see it with your own kids and you're like, oh God, when they're bored they fight. You can teach them how to not fight. You can actually give them the skills during their coping with and engaging with their classmates or engaging with you, because we know our kids have a tendency at this time, our new millennials, of what we call talking back. And some of them will come into a room and they'll be like, Mom, he's doing this. Dad, he's doing that. And you're like, well, go deal with it. You shouldn't get involved. Let them handle it, because they can. You have to allow them to. Many of us parents, if we're having a conversation with someone and our child comes into the room, immediately we cancel the conversation and we want to immediately speak with this child. Oh my God, what's going on? What do you need? Anything you want. You're not going to mess up their attachment. They're going to be fine. You can say to them, go and deal with it. Mommy will be there in a few minutes, and continue your conversation. They don't need to know that immediate gratification is going to occur every time that they're bored, that you're going to just come and deal with it. Remember, we are the first and biggest barrier for our children when it comes to them crossing over and dealing with their boredom and being in this creative cycle. So have them have chores to do. Yes, we can have a list of that. You can do chores together. You guys are at home. So all of this can occur, most definitely. So I want to make sure, I'm just double checking to make sure nobody is having any issues. Um, because I also see clients as well. So I was looking on here to make sure nobody is stressed or worried and that they need my assistance. Remember, if, oh, there we have it. How do I deal with an only child being bored? He or she is alone, no fights. Okay, Edwards, hi. Well, yes, I completely understand. If you have only children like I do myself, guess what? They can still be creative with play. They don't have to be on technology or anything like that. I had my daughter would have her toys in her room, and I have cracked the door open and I'm like, go ahead, you deal with your own boredom. I am not here to deal with that for you. And she would go in and have imaginary play. You don't understand how wonderful that is. If the child is within that age group of imaginary play, they can play with their dolls on their own or their trucks or whatever it is that they like to play with. They can play dress up with themselves. They can have tea parties, all of those things. You do not always have to put technology, doesn't always have to be the answer. Also, guess what? If they're older, teenagers, they can write in journals. They could write stories. They can use their imagination. You don't understand how much creativity can occur. They can build things. They can redesign their room. They can design the backyard. They can actually plant a garden and design it the way what flowers they want when. Why should we have those flowers picked now? Why should we plant these flowers? Why is this plant good? What herbs should I plant if they're deciding to do an herb garden? There's lots of things that you can do with a child who's an only child as well, Edwards. Also, they can lose themselves in a book. I can't tell you, before I became a person hooked on academics, I can't tell you how many times I got lost in books. And I know they weren't always academic books, but I would be lost in some sort of an English romance novel, and I would be talking about earls and dukes and duchesses, and it would be so much fun, and I would be in it, literally, as though it was a movie playing, and you couldn't get me out of it. You know, you literally, Kareen, come on, get your head out of the clouds, kinds of things I would hear my mom saying. But that's only when I was reading an interesting book. I would get myself lost in that because we didn't have TV in Trinidad as many channels as our kids have now. We had two channels. What was it? 13 and 2? I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Type it in. I think it was channel 13 and channel 2. And pretty much that's all we had for the whole time, the whole day. So I just want you to know that kids in this generation are not accustomed to entertaining themselves, and we need to teach that skill and reintroduce them to that skill, because like I said, when we were growing up, we went outside and we played. And right now your kids are not able to go outside and play with other children, but they could participate in parallel play right there in their room. They can play with each other if they have their own kids. You can do activities with your children. We're not saying that you're just leaving them to their own device on their own the entire day, but you have to have periods of their school periods, whatever that looks like for you and your child. Then there should be play periods that you're doing with your kid together. And then there should be a technology free period. 2 and 13, and then TV 6 years later. Thank you, Edwards. You're absolutely correct. So we have all of these things that children are able to do. But again, as parents, we're afraid that it's going to take us away from what we would like to be doing, which is probably binge watching something on Netflix. And I get it. But as I said to you in my last session, these are your children. Let me say that again. These are your children. It is your responsibility to teach them certain skills that you haven't been able to teach them before. These are your kids. So, in saying that, Help them to learn how to cope with this new normal. Help them to learn how to be resilient through this crisis. They're only going to learn from you. So if you are not practicing those behaviors of actually utilizing your time and allowing yourself to be bored so that creativity can creep in and new things can be created, old things can be changed into new things, then you're doing them a disservice. Because I think if we all remember our childhood, it was phenomenal. For many of us, we had a childhood. Our kids do not. I make a conscious effort to encourage my child to be a child as much as possible. And sometimes I have to be a child with her because she's an only child. And sometimes I would rather be doing something else. I'm not going to lie. Yes, especially like right now, I'm binge watching Black Lightning, right? But I have to pause, I have to stop, and I have to come out and do other things and be part of the rest of the world. So you have to commit. Today, I need you all to commit to creating boredom opportunities for yourself and for your children, okay? It's going to be hard. Your kids are going to make it really hard when you're first starting to actually deliberately create boredom for them. They're going to be annoying. They're going to be frustrated. And you're going to be frustrated. They're going to be begging for their phones and their iPads, begging to go onto their Game Boys, all of those things. They're going to be all around disruptive. But slowly, they're going to begin to really see, wow, I can actually do something else that's a little bit more fun. If your child loves to sketch, they can draw, they can create worlds just within their artistry. They can use clay to put sculptures together. There's so much stuff that your children are able to do. They can write stories, which is something that I am using my quote unquote boredom opportunity times for, is continuing those children's stories that I begun many, many years ago and never completed because I was too busy. I was too busy to be bored. And that's sad. Sometimes it's okay. And I need you to start practicing that. Start slowly teaching your kids how to entertain themselves. Wow, that's an epic idea, isn't it? Entertain yourself. Because I know when I would interrupt my mother in the middle of something she was doing because I was bored, I would get such a look. She'd be like, ah! That's all she had to say, ah! And that look. All right, let me go do something else. Let me find something else to do. And sometimes it was creative stuff, and sometimes it might have been mischievous things. But I always learned something. Always learned something. In every quote unquote boredom opportunity moments that I had, I always learned something. I was able to connect to my playful imagination. I was able to connect to some of the deepest levels of myself. And I think I became a little bit more confident because I would practice in front of the mirror speaking to people. I would practice saying Dr. Clay to people. Oh, well, Dr. Gibson, I'm Lochin at that point, but yes. I think as adults, we are still learning to deal with it also. Plain truth for many, I am home and there are no schools as we battle COVID-19. Yes. Okay. So, and I'm getting bored being home. So we are doing cold process, good, soap as our activity. Excellent. Excellent. Because guess what? You're doing the cold processed soaps. People need soaps. Some people can't afford to go to the store because people are price gouging right now all over the world. It's not just in Trinidad. It's not just in the United States. So thank you, Edwards, for giving us some of those ideas. I know creative people. This is one of one of my family members owns this store, Creative People, in Marabella, and they have all of these creative ideas that they give. And I think if you go onto her website or her Facebook, you would be able to see some of the different classes that she does for people making things. Maybe you could put a bug in her ear to start doing some classes online, to start teaching people how to make soap, if you don't want to just go on YouTube and do so. And hopefully maybe some people, if you're not going to sell it, might be able to share it for those who cannot afford to purchase soap. There are people who are making homemade hand sanitizer from natural products that they show you how to do that. So you're able to do that for yourselves. Those are different things. So thank you, Edwards. That was a phenomenal idea. CT Cover is another organization in Trinidad. I need to find some more that are here, but I think in the US, people have a little bit more access to some things that I know we don't have in the Caribbean. So if you don't know some of these organizations, please, I want you guys to start sharing some of those things with your Facebook friends and family so that they're able to see that there are other resources, that they're able to teach their kids different things. I've been trying to teach my child how to cook. Now, I know my brothers, sisters, and some of my cousins out there would be like, but Karen, but you don't cook. Well, I do cook. Sometimes. And when I do cook, I cook pretty well. And so I've been trying to encourage my daughter to learn how to cook. We have been a little bit spoiled that my husband is a phenomenal cook. And I just like when he cooks better than when I cook. But we will do better with that. And I said that while I'm here, I would start practicing doing different things. So I'm modeling those things for her. So us eating healthier, that's one of the things that I have been modeling for my daughter and following, hi Dexter, and following through with that, making sure that she's doing it, making sure that we're doing it together as a family and that nobody's trying to cut corners or anything like that. So I want you guys to know that this is something that you're all able to do. You're capable of doing this. You're capable of finding creative things to do in these boredom opportunities, that you don't have to just sit and twiddle your thumbs. You, like I said, create something new out of something old. Make new connections and bonds with your children and with your spouse. Have conversations within yourself. Know you better. I had one person say to me recently, Dr. Clay, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am anymore. I was a mother, or I am a mother, I am a spouse, but who I am now, me, just by myself, if I was by myself, who am I? Boredom opportunities gives you those opportunities to dig deep into different levels of who you are. To start writing into a journal, like I said. To start thinking about interesting things you would like to do with your life now as well as in the future. So, I want to say thank you again, my Facebook family and friends. Oh my goodness, what happened? Oh. What happened? Unable to find the camera or the microphone. I'm still on, but it's saying it's unable to find the camera or the microphone, so I think it stopped. Okay. Can you still hear me? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I do not know what is going on. I know some of you can probably still see me and can still hear me. So I'm going to end our call at this moment. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you very much, CT Cover. I appreciate that. So then I'm just going to go play off the cuff. So again, thank you very much for sharing your time with me. I want you to please also share with me what other ideas you would like us to cover in our future sessions that we have at Come Sit and Chat with Dr. Clay. I hope today was a little bit helpful for you to recognize that it is a very positive thing for you to have boredom opportunities with your children as well as with yourself. Please Do not ignore these moments that life is giving you to be able to dig deeper and turn some old things into something new. I thank you again, and I appreciate your time. And we will see you next time on Come Sit and Chat with Dr. Clay. Good day, everybody, and please be safe and continue to self-isolate. We appreciate it, and definitely other people who are most susceptible to this illness appreciate it as well. We are strong together. Thank you. Bye.